Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation of Glass. Derek Morrison stood at the construction site of his latest project, his calloused hands gripping the blueprints as he surveyed the progress. At 35, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had built his empire from nothing but determination and grit. "Mr. Morrison," called out Mike, one of his longtime foremen. "The concrete supplier's trying to change the terms again?" Derek's jaw tightened. "Get them on the phone, now." The call lasted exactly 3 minutes. "Listen carefully." Derek's voice cut through the excuses like steel. "You signed a contract. You'll honor it, or I'll ensure you never pour another foundation in Detroit. Your choice." He ended the call without waiting for a response. Mike whistled low. "Brutal as always, boss. You don't build something lasting by letting people walk all over you," Derek replied, returning to the blueprints. "I learned that in foster care. 17 homes across Michigan taught me everything I needed to know about trust and betrayal." The memories surfaced unbidden. Nights spent studying by streetlight after foster parents had locked him out. Days working construction sites under the table at 16, learning every aspect of the trade while his peers attended high school parties. The burn of betrayal when foster families sent him back, their promises of permanence proving as hollow as their hearts. His phone buzzed, another city planning commission meeting in an hour. Derek had fought his way into these circles, earning respect through results rather than connections. His projects weren't just about profit. They were about transformation. Where others saw decay, he saw possibility. Where others demolished communities, he rebuilt them. The meeting room at City Hall buzzed with the usual mix of developers, commissioners, and community representatives. Derek stood to present his latest proposal for rehabilitating the Mason Street district when he noticed her, Melissa Kane, watching him with undisguised interest as he outlined his vision. "Mr. Morrison," she spoke up during the Q&A, "your commitment to preserving local businesses while upgrading the infrastructure is admirable. But have you considered the interior design aspects? These spaces need to attract new clientele while maintaining their authentic character." Derek met her gaze. "Ms. Kane, I presume? Your reputation precedes you. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on that balance." After the meeting, they continued their discussion over coffee that turned into dinner. Melissa's expertise in commercial interior design complemented his development vision perfectly. Her old money connections opened doors that Derek's raw talent had been battering down for years. "You're different from the other developers," Melissa observed, studying him across the table. "They talk about community impact for the PR. You actually mean it." "I lived in communities that got destroyed by urban renewal," Derek replied. "Watch families get pushed out so some corporation could build luxury condos. I swore I'd do it differently." Their courtship moved at the speed of business, efficient, purposeful, and driven by mutual ambition. Within 6 months, Derek found himself not just with a fiancé, but with 2 stepchildren-to-be, Isabella, 14, and Mason, 12. "They need a strong male figure in their lives," Melissa explained one evening at his penthouse office. "Their father, he couldn't handle the pressure. Started with pills, ended with harder stuff." The divorce was ugly. Derek recognized the hunger in her eyes when she surveyed his office, the way she traced the skyline visible through his windows. It matched his own drive, or so he thought. The wedding was a merger of worlds, his contractors and site managers mixing with her society friends and family connections. Isabella and Mason watched the ceremony with careful eyes, having already learned from their mother how to gauge which way the wind was blowing. "I know you're not trying to replace their father," Melissa said on their honeymoon in Belize. "But they need structure, discipline, values their father couldn't provide." Derek took the responsibilities seriously. He began including Isabella in project meetings during her school breaks, teaching her the business from the ground up. Mason's interest in photography led to discussions about documentation and marketing. They weren't his blood, but he recognized in them the same drive to prove themselves that had pushed him forward all his life. The first year passed in a whirlwind of projects and integration. Derek's company, Morrison Properties, expanded its reach. Melissa's design firm landed increasingly prestigious clients. The children adapted to their new family configuration with the resilience of youth. But success, Derek had learned early, was like blood in the water. It attracted sharks. Late one night, reviewing security footage with Jack Torres, his head of security and closest friend, Derek noticed a pattern he hadn't seen developing. "Play that again," he instructed, watching a client meeting from the previous week. The way Melissa leaned in while discussing design options with Richard Lancaster, the subtle touch of hands that lingered too long. Jack's expression remained neutral. "Want me to run a background check?" "Everything you can find," Derek replied, his voice carrying the same tone he used when dealing with contract breakers. "I didn't fight my way up from nothing to let anyone threaten what I built." The sun rose over Detroit as Derek stood at his office window, thinking about trust and betrayal, about foundations built on glass, and about the lessons learned in 17 foster homes. He had learned to verify before trusting, to watch before acting, and most importantly, to strike decisively when threatened. His phone buzzed, Melissa, asking about dinner plans with potential investors. He confirmed without revealing his suspicions. Years of foster care had taught him another valuable lesson. Sometimes the best defense was letting others think they had the upper hand. Mr. Morrison, his assistant, interrupted his thoughts. The concrete supplier called. "They've agreed to honor the original contract terms." Derek nodded, allowing himself a small smile. In business, as in life, respect was earned through strength. He had built his empire by being unforgiving with those who crossed him, and he would protect it the same way. The morning sun glinted off the steel and glass of the buildings he had raised from Detroit's abandoned lots. Each one a testament to his vision, his determination, and his absolute refusal to be betrayed again. Chapter 2. Cracks in the Mirror. The Morrison Properties executive boardroom hummed with tension as Derek concluded his presentation on their latest development project. 5 years into his marriage to Melissa, success had brought both opportunities and complications. "The community center renovation stays in the budget," Derek stated, his tone brooking no argument. "It's non-negotiable." Richard Lancaster, attending as a potential investor, leaned forward with a practiced smile. "Derek, surely we can find some areas to optimize costs. The profit margins on luxury developments are not the only measure of success." Derek cut him off. "My company, my rules. If that doesn't work for you, there's the door." The meeting dispersed, but Rick lingered, his attention fixed on Melissa, who was presenting her design concepts. Derek noticed the way Rick's eyes followed his wife, cataloging every detail for future reference. Later that evening, Jack Torres arrived at Derek's office with a thick folder. "You were right about Lancaster," he reported. "His company's leveraged to the hilt. He's lost 3 major deals to us in the past year alone." Derek reviewed the documents, his expression hardening. "And his wife? Catherine Lancaster, top criminal defense attorney. Word is their marriage is more merger than romance." Jack hesitated. "There's more. Lancaster's been showing up at all of Melissa's out-of-town project sites. Always has a business reason, but the timing's too perfect to be coincidence." Derek's hands tightened on the folder. "Keep watching. Document everything. And Jack, give me everything you can on Catherine Lancaster. Everyone has pressure points. At home, the dynamics were shifting in subtle ways. Isabella, now 19 and interning at Morrison Properties during college breaks, had inherited Derek's instinct for reading people. "Mom's different lately," she observed one evening while reviewing project documents with Derek in his home office. "More critical, especially about your background." Derek nodded, remembering Melissa's recent comments at a charity gala. "Your mother's always been status conscious." "It's more than that," Isabella insisted. "When Rick Lancaster's around, she becomes someone else entirely." And Mason's noticed too. As if summoned by his name, Mason appeared in the doorway, camera in hand. At 17, he developed a keen eye for detail through his photography. "Mom asked me to photograph the Harrison Street project opening," he said, "but she specifically wanted shots of her working with Rick Lancaster's team. Said it was for the portfolio, but..." Derek's expression remained neutral, but his mind was already calculating moves and counter-moves. "Keep taking pictures, Mason. Document everything. You never know what might be important later." The next morning, Derek arrived early at the construction site of their latest project. The workers straightened instinctively. They knew his reputation for hands-on management and exacting standards. Mr. Morrison called out one of the site's supervisors. There's been a change order for the interior finishes. Came through Mrs. Morrison's office last night. Derek reviewed the order, recognizing the supplier, one of Rick Lancaster's subsidiary companies. The costs were inflated by at least 30%. Cancel it, he commanded. Revert to the original specifications. His phone buzzed Melissa. Darling, about the change order. Rick's company offers superior quality. The additional cost is justified for the target market we're pursuing. The order's canceled, Derek replied flatly. We don't change suppliers mid-project without proper vetting. You're being unreasonable. Melissa's voice took on the condescending tone she'd been using more frequently. Rick knows this market. His expertise is not required. Derek cut her off. My company, my decision. He ended the call, then dialed Jack. I want a complete audit of all project changes in the last 6 months. Focus on any connections to Lancaster's companies. That evening, Derek attended a business dinner where he found himself seated next to Catherine Lancaster. Her perfectly maintained facade couldn't quite hide the calculated assessment in her eyes. Your latest project is impressive, she offered. The community integration aspects particularly. It's rare to see developers consider the human elements so thoroughly. I believe in building things that last, Derek replied, studying her reaction. That requires a solid foundation. In business and in life. Catherine's smile held a hint of recognition. Indeed. Though some people prefer quick profits to lasting value. My husband, for instance, has always been impatient for results. The conversation continued in careful implications and veiled references. Both recognized in the other a strategic mind evaluating potential allies and threats. Later that week, Derek reviewed security footage with Jack, watching Melissa and Rick at various project sites and social functions. The pattern was becoming clearer. Lingering touches, private conversations in corners, meetings that ran suspiciously long. Their operational security is sloppy, Jack noted. They're getting confident, making mistakes. Good. Derek's voice was ice. Overconfidence makes people careless. Makes them vulnerable. He paused the footage on a frame showing Rick laughing with Melissa at a charity event. Have you ever known me to forgive betrayal, Jack? Never, Jack replied without hesitation. That's why I've worked for you for 15 years. Derek nodded, remembering the lesson learned in his 7th foster home. Betrayal unanswered was betrayal invited. Start building the file. Everything. Every meeting, every call, every change order and project modification. When I move, I want it to be decisive. Isabella knocked on his office door, carrying fresh project reports. Her expression showed she'd been crying. I overheard Mom on the phone, she said quietly. She was talking to Rick about the urban renewal project, about how they could use your obsession with community involvement against you. Make it look like mismanagement. Derek's expression didn't change, but his voice carried the weight of years of built-up armor against betrayal. You did right bringing this to me. Family doesn't betray family. You're more family to me than she is right now, Isabella replied fiercely. Mason feels the same way. We see how you treat people, how you build things to last. We're with you, whatever happens. Derek squeezed her shoulder, the only display of emotion he allowed himself. Keep watching. Keep documenting. When the time comes, we'll need every piece of evidence. That night, Derek stood in his home office, reviewing years of project files. Each success, each building risen from Detroit's abandoned lots, represented a step away from the powerless foster child he'd once been. He'd built his empire through unwavering determination and an absolute intolerance for betrayal. Melissa's laughter drifted up from the garden where she was hosting a dinner party. Rick Lancaster's voice mingled with hers, both of them likely believing their facade was still intact. Derek smiled coldly, remembering another lesson from foster care. Predators who thought their prey was weak made fatal mistakes. He'd learned to wait, to watch, to gather evidence until the moment was right. Then, like the demolitions that cleared space for his new projects, he struck with absolute finality. Chapter 3. The First Tremors. Jack Torres stood in Derek Morrison's office, his military training evident in his rigid posture as he delivered his latest report. The early morning sun painted Detroit's skyline in stark contrasts, much like the situation unfolding before them. Melissa's taken 3 business trips in the past month, Jack stated, laying out surveillance photos. Each time, Lancaster showed up within hours of her arrival. Different hotels, but always connecting rooms. Derek examined the photos with clinical detachment. And the project modifications? Lancaster's companies have been quietly acquiring suppliers we work with. 6 in the past 4 months, each followed by attempts to change project specifications to their more expensive options. A knock at the door interrupted them. Catherine Lancaster entered, her designer's suit and perfect makeup a shield against vulnerability. "Mr. Morrison, I believe we need to talk." Derek gestured for her to sit, noting how she positioned herself with a clear view of both exits. A survivor's instinct he recognized from his own past. "Your husband's getting careless," Derek stated bluntly. Catherine's laugh held no humor. "Richard has always mistaken cunning for intelligence. He thinks no one notices his pattern." She placed a USB drive on Derek's desk. Financial records, offshore accounts, communications with certain city officials about project bids. "I've been documenting everything since I noticed him targeting your company. Why share this now? Because unlike my husband, I recognize a force of nature when I see one. When you move against him, and we both know you will, I want to be on the right side of the avalanche." After she left, Jack examined the drive's contents. "She's thorough. This could bury Lancaster's company." "Not yet," Derek replied. "Let them think they're winning. Overconfidence makes people sloppy." The Morrison Properties charity gala that evening proved his point. Derek watched from across the ballroom as Rick Lancaster held court with potential investors, Melissa at his side laughing too loudly at his jokes. "Some people rise above their blue-collar roots," Rick's voice carried clearly, "but you can't escape what you really are." Melissa's laughter following the comment cut through the room. Derek maintained his neutral expression, even as he noted which board members showed discomfort at the exchange. Isabella approached, her internship experience evident in her professional poise. "Dad, I've documented the conversation. Added it to the file." "Good girl," Derek approved. "Keep your brother close tonight. Things might get complicated soon." Mason appeared with his camera, his 17 years carrying more observation skills than most adults. "Mom's been drinking more than usual." She and Rick disappeared into the coat room for 20 minutes earlier. Derek's hand tightened on his glass, the only sign of his inner fury. "Document everything, but maintain distance. Don't let them know you're watching." Later that night, Jack reported another development. "Lancaster's meeting with Watson Development tomorrow. Word is he's trying to undermine our bid for the urban renewal project." Derek smiled, an expression that had made harder men flinch. "Perfect. Have our sources in the Planning Commission ready. When he tries to bribe them, I want evidence." The next morning, Melissa breezed into his office unannounced. "Darling, I've been thinking about the renewal project. Perhaps we should consider bringing in additional investors. Rick has some interesting ideas about maximizing profit potential." "Rick seems to have a lot of ideas lately," Derek replied evenly. "Especially about my company." "Don't be provincial about this." Melissa's tone dripped condescension. "Rick understands the higher-end market. Your focus on community involvement is admirable, but sometimes you need to think bigger." Derek recalled a similar conversation in his 11th foster home, where he'd learned that condescension often masked desperation. "My company isn't for sale," he stated flatly. "To Rick or anyone else?" Melissa's perfectly manicured nails tapped against his desk. "You're being stubborn. Rick's connections could." "Could what?" Derek interrupted, standing slowly. "Help me rise above my blue-collar roots?" The color drained from Melissa's face. "You heard that?" Rick was just playing to his audience. "Like you were?" Derek's voice remained deadly calm. "Like you've been doing since the day we met." Before Melissa could respond, Jack entered with urgent news. "Mr. Morrison, Watson Development just filed a complaint with the City Planning Commission. They're alleging irregularities in our bidding process." Derek noticed how Melissa's expression flickered, a mix of anticipation and fear. "Let me guess. Rick Lancaster provided them with evidence." "Anonymous source," Jack confirmed. but the documentation has his fingerprints all over it. Handle it, Derek commanded. Jack nodded and left, while Melissa stood frozen. This is business, Derek, she attempted. You're taking things too personally. No, Melissa. This is betrayal. And if there's one thing I learned in foster care, it's how to recognize it. He turned to the window, effectively dismissing her. Close the door on your way out. That evening, Derek met with his legal team. The evidence Catherine Lancaster had provided painted a clear picture of Rick's attempts to manipulate project bids and undermine Morrison Properties. He's overplayed his hand, Derek's lead counsel observed. These documents show a pattern of corporate espionage. Good, Derek replied. But we wait. Let him think his plan is working. Isabella arrived with more observations. Mom's been meeting with the board members' wives, hosting private lunches. She's trying to turn them against you, suggesting you're becoming unstable, too focused on charity projects instead of profits. Derek's expression darkened. And how are these society ladies responding? Most see through it, Isabella assured him. Your reputation for integrity means more than country club gossip. But Mrs. Henderson seemed receptive. Henderson, Derek mused. His company handles our environmental impact studies. Already on it, Jack confirmed, entering with a fresh file. Found some interesting irregularities in their recent reports. Nothing that would harm our projects, but enough to make Henderson nervous if exposed. Mason contributed his own intelligence. I've been reviewing my event photos from the past year. There's a pattern to Mom and Rick's interactions. Always positioned to look casual to most people, but when you know what to look for, he pulled up a series of photographs on his laptop. Each showed seemingly innocent moments that, viewed collectively, told a different story. Lingering touches, secretive glances, private conversations in public spaces. Well done, Derek approved. Both of you. Keep building the file. Later that night, Derek reviewed security footage from his office buildings. Rick Lancaster had been making more frequent appearances, always with plausible business reasons. The camera caught a recent interaction between Rick and Melissa in the parking garage, their body language telling a story they thought no one could see. Arrogant, Jack commented, watching alongside him. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Pride before the fall, Derek replied, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had learned that lesson thoroughly. How's our insider at the Planning Commission? Ready. Lancaster tried to schedule a private meeting about the urban renewal project. We'll have everything recorded. Derek nodded, remembering every foster home that had promised permanence only to discard him. Every system that had failed him. Every lesson about trust and betrayal he'd learned the hard way. Sir, Jack hesitated. When do we move? Not yet. Derek's voice was steel. Let them build their house of cards higher. When we strike, it won't be just Lancaster's company we take down. It'll be everything they've built on lies. The city skyline reflected in his office windows, each building a testament to his rise from nothing. He'd built his empire through unflinching determination and an absolute refusal to forgive betrayal. Melissa and Rick's attempt to undermine him would prove to be their greatest mistake. Your mother, he said to Isabella and Mason as they prepared to leave, thinks she's married to a man who can be manipulated. Used. Discarded. His smile was a warning. She's about to learn how wrong she is. Act 1 concluded with the pieces in motion. Derek gathering evidence. His children loyal to the father who had earned their trust, and his betrayers growing more confident in their supposed victory. The foundation of glass was cracking, but only Derek knew just how completely he would shatter it when the time came. Chapter 4. The Breaking Point. The summer heat baked Detroit's concrete as Derek Morrison reviewed the urban renewal project plans in his office. His phone buzzed, Melissa's name flashing on the screen. I'm taking the children to the lake house, she announced without preamble. We need family bonding time before your big presentation to the city council. Derek's jaw tightened. The timing was suspicious. The presentation's in 3 days, which is why it's perfect. You'll be too busy to notice we're gone, and the children need a break from all this business focus. In the background, he heard Isabella's voice raised in protest. Mom, I'm supposed to help with the presentation. The community impact analysis. Isabella, Melissa's voice dripped with practiced manipulation. When was the last time we spent real time together as a family? without contracts and development plans? Derek recognized the subtle dig at his work ethic, the implied criticism of his influence on the children. Put Isabella on the phone. Dad, Isabella's voice carried tension. I don't want to go. The presentation. Go. Derek interrupted, his mind already calculating possibilities. Take your phone. Keep it charged. But, trust me, he emphasized each word carefully. Go. Watch. Record. The line went quiet for a moment before Isabella whispered, Understood. 2 days later, Jack Torres entered Derek's office with surveillance photos. Lancaster's private jet left Detroit an hour ago. Flight plan shows northern Michigan as the destination. Derek nodded, unsurprised. The children? Isabella's been texting updates. Lancaster arrived claiming he needed to discuss design specifications for the renewal project. Brought expensive wine, started drinking with your wife around noon. Derek's hands curled into fists. Mason, keeping his distance, taking pictures. Smart kid. Jack hesitated. Sir, if you want me to send a team. No. Derek's voice was ice. Let it play out. Isabella knows what to do. The hours crawled by as Derek finalized his presentation. Each slide, showcasing community integration, felt like a mockery of his own fractured family situation. But weakness wasn't an option. He'd learned in foster care that predators struck hardest when they sensed vulnerability. His phone rang at 3 a.m. Isabella's voice came through broken with tears. Dad, I recorded everything. I'm sending it now. They're in Mom's room. Rick's there. They're talking about you, about the project, planning something. I can hear them through the walls. Are you safe? Derek's voice remained steady, controlled. Yes. Mason's with me. We locked ourselves in the boathouse. Dad, the things they're saying about you, about the company, send the video. Then get some sleep. Tomorrow, take Mason into town. Stay in public places. The video arrived moments later. Derek watched with cold fury as Rick and Melissa, drunk on wine and success, revealed their true faces. Poor Derek. Melissa's voice slurred slightly. So obsessed with his community projects. He never understood that real power comes from connections, from knowing which rules to break. Rick's laugh carried clear through the phone's microphone. Once the renewal project launches, we'll have everything we need to prove mismanagement. The board will have no choice but to act. Your working-class hero husband won't know what hit him. He actually thinks he belongs in our world. Melissa's cruel amusement cut deep. As if you can erase where you come from. Once trash, always. Derek stopped the video, his expression murderous. Jack, watching silently, took a step back. Sir? Call Catherine Lancaster, Derek commanded. Tell her it's time. Then get the emergency board meeting protocols ready. And Jack, make sure our friends at the FBI are prepared to receive an anonymous tip about certain financial irregularities. The children? Tell them to stay in town tomorrow. I don't want them anywhere near the lake house when this starts. Derek turned to his computer, fingers flying over the keyboard as he initiated commands that would lock down company assets, restrict access codes, and protect what he'd built from the parasites trying to destroy it. They think I'm trash, he murmured, remembering similar words from foster parents who'd seen him as nothing but a paycheck. Let's show them what happens when you underestimate someone who built himself from nothing. The night stretched into dawn as Derek Morrison, the man who'd fought his way up from foster care to build an empire, prepared to demonstrate exactly why betrayal was the one sin he never forgave. Chapter 5. Strategic Silence. Catherine Lancaster arrived at Derek's office before sunrise, her designer briefcase containing enough documentation to destroy her husband's career. I've been waiting for this call, she stated, laying out files with practiced precision. Rick's been sloppy, overconfident. These offshore accounts traced directly to bribes paid to city officials. Derek reviewed the documents, his expression granite. And Melissa's involvement? Joint signatures on key transfers. She's been using her design firm to launder money through inflated contracts. Catherine's smile held no warmth. My husband never understood that I started documenting his indiscretions the day he first looked at another woman. Jack Torres entered with additional files. Emergency board meeting is set for noon. Our contacts at the FBI are standing by. Derek nodded, remembering another lesson from foster care. Revenge served cold lasted longer. Start the process, but quietly. I want them enjoying their victory at the lake house when it hits. The morning passed in calculated moves. Derek's team of lawyers executed a complex series of corporate restructuring documents, protecting Morrison Properties' assets and employees from the coming storm. Isabella called around 10. Mom and Rick are still sleeping. Mason got photos of them coming out of her room at dawn. Dad, what do you want us to do? Stay in town. Start documenting your experiences with Rick's behavior at company functions. Mason's photos, your observations. Create a timeline. Already started. Isabella's voice carried her mother's determination, but her stepfather's integrity. Mason's organizing his photos by date and location. The way Rick looked at Mom at company events, how they disappear during functions. Good. Send everything to Jack. And Isabella, when this breaks, people will ask you to take sides. We already have, she stated firmly. Mason, and I know who really cares about building things that last. The emergency board meeting began precisely at noon. Derek stood before the assembled members, his presence commanding respect. Ladies and gentlemen, I've called you here because our company faces a threat. Not from outside competitors, but from cancer within. He presented the evidence methodically. Financial records showing Rick Lancaster's attempts to manipulate project bids. Emails proving Melissa's involvement in steering contracts to shell companies. Mason's photographs documenting their pattern of behavior at company functions. Mr. Morrison, one board member interrupted. These allegations against your wife are proven by her own signatures. Derek cut him off. And by this, he played selected portions of Isabella's recording. The board sat in stunned silence as Melissa and Rick's drunken plotting filled the room. I've already initiated protective measures, Derek continued. Our assets are secured. Key projects are insulated. And in approximately 1 hour, the FBI will receive an anonymous tip about certain financial irregularities in Lancaster Development's dealings. The publicity, another board member began, will show that Morrison Properties acts decisively against corruption. Derek's voice brooked no argument. I built this company from nothing, fought my way up from foster care to create something that matters. Anyone who thinks they can destroy that is about to learn how wrong they are. Catherine Lancaster stepped forward. My law firm is prepared to handle any legal challenges. We've been documenting Rick's criminal behavior for months. This isn't just about infidelity. It's about systematic corporate fraud. The board voted unanimously to support Derek's actions. As they filed out, Jack approached with updates. FBI's moving on Lancaster Development. Catherine's divorce papers will be served simultaneously with the federal warrants. And sir, Isabella reports that Rick and Melissa are finally up, drinking mimosas by the lake. Derek's smile would have made a shark proud. Perfect. Let them enjoy their last moments of victory. Have security ready at all Morrison Properties locations. When they try to return to their offices, I want them escorted out publicly. Hours passed as the machinery of destruction Derek had built moved with silent efficiency. Shell companies were exposed, bank accounts frozen, evidence transferred to federal investigators. Mason called mid-afternoon. Mom and Rick are planning to stay another night. They're talking about celebration dinner in town. Should we? Stay away from the lake house, Derek commanded. Let them drink. Let them celebrate. Tomorrow they learn what it means to betray someone who built himself from nothing. In his office, Derek reviewed the final preparations. Security cards deactivated. Passwords changed. Access to company servers blocked. The divorce papers his lawyers had prepared sat ready, along with documentation of Melissa's complicity in Rick's schemes. Sir, Jack interrupted his thoughts. Catherine Lancaster reports that the FBI has everything they need. They're moving on Lancaster Development at dawn. Derek nodded, remembering the foster homes that had taught him patience and revenge. Make sure our PR team is ready. When this breaks, I want our narrative controlled. Morrison Properties stands for integrity. Anyone who threatens that learns why I've survived everything life threw at me. The sun set over Detroit as Derek Morrison, the man who'd fought his way up from nothing, Prepare to show his betrayers exactly why he'd earned his reputation for ruthlessness. Chapter 6. The Counterstrike. Melissa Lancaster's key card failed at Morrison Properties' main entrance. She stood in designer heels, makeup perfect despite the early hour, jabbing the card repeatedly at the reader. "Is there a problem, Mrs. Morrison?" The security guard's polite tone carried an edge of satisfaction. "I'll need to check the approved access list." "Don't be ridiculous," Melissa snapped. "I'm Derek Morrison's wife." "Not anymore." Derek's voice cut through the morning air as he approached, flanked by Jack Torres and 2 security officers. "Your access was revoked an hour ago, along with your position on the board." Melissa's composure cracked. "Derek, whatever you think, I don't think. I know." He handed her an envelope. "Divorce papers. Your copies of the federal indictments are included. Along with this." He held up his phone, playing a clip from Isabella's recording. Melissa's own voice filled the space. "Once trash, always trash. The children," she began, "made their choice." Derek's voice could have frozen fire. "They've seen who you really are, who you've always been." Security escorted her to the street as employees arrived for work, witnessing her public humiliation. Derek turned to Jack. "Lancaster Development? FBI's there now. Rick tried to delete files when he got the warrant notice, but we already had copies of everything." Catherine's divorce papers were served simultaneously. Derek nodded, remembering lessons learned in 17 foster homes about the satisfaction of justified revenge. "Isabella and Mason? Safe at your penthouse. They've recorded video statements about Rick's pattern of behavior at company functions. Mason's photos are with the FBI." The morning news exploded with headlines. "Lancaster Development raided by FBI. Corporate fraud scheme exposed. Morrison Properties cooperating with federal investigation." Derek watched the coverage from his office, surrounded by his legal team. Rick Lancaster's attempt to call him went straight to voicemail. "Sir," his assistant interrupted. "Melissa's family is here." Her parents entered, their usual aristocratic bearing shaken. "Derek, surely we can handle this privately. Like you handle my working-class background privately?" Derek's tone could cut diamond. "Your daughter chose her path. Now she can walk it alone. But your reputation is built on integrity," Derek interrupted. "Unlike your daughter's, which was built on lies." He handed them files documenting Melissa's involvement in Rick's schemes. "Your family's trust fund access has been revoked. The evidence of her money laundering through design contracts is with the FBI." They left ashen-faced as Catherine Lancaster arrived with updates. "Rick's trying to cut a deal, offering to testify about other developers' bribes." "Let him sink himself deeper," Derek commanded. "Release the documentation of his harassment at company functions." Mason's photos, Isabella's testimony. The afternoon brought attempts at damage control from Lancaster Development's board. Derek refused their calls, letting Jack handle the messages. "They're offering to buy out contracts, trying to save what they can," Jack reported. "No deals," Derek's voice was steel. "They backed Rick's play against me. Now they learn why that was a mistake." Isabella and Mason arrived as evening approached. Their mother's increasingly desperate texts showed on their phones, ignored. "She's threatening to contest custody," Isabella reported. "Says she'll claim you turned us against her." Derek's laugh held no humor. "Let her try. Your video statements about her behavior are already filed with the court, along with documentation of her drinking, her affair, her financial crimes." Mason's phone chimed with breaking news. Rick Lancaster had been arrested attempting to board a private jet. "Dad," Mason's voice carried concern. "Mom's outside the building. Security says she's demanding to see you." Derek moved to the window. Melissa stood on the sidewalk, her designer outfit wrinkled, makeup smeared by tears. "Sir?" Jack waited for instructions. "Let her stand there." Derek's voice carried the weight of years of betrayal overcome. "Let who see what happens when you betray someone who built himself from nothing." The children watched their mother's public breakdown with mixed emotions. "She never understood, did she?" Isabella observed. "That real strength isn't about social status or connections." "No," Derek agreed, remembering foster homes that had taught him the true meaning of strength. "Real strength is building something that lasts, and being willing to destroy anyone who threatens it." The sun set on Detroit as Melissa Morrison, now facing federal charges and social exile, learned too late that she'd underestimated the man she'd dismissed as trash. Derek Morrison, the boy who'd fought his way up from foster care, the man who'd built an empire through sheer determination, stood watching his revenge unfold with the satisfaction of someone who'd learned early that betrayal deserved no mercy. The community he'd helped build would weather this storm, emerging stronger. His children stood with him, having chosen integrity over ease. And his betrayers learned, too late, why Derek Morrison's reputation for ruthlessness was well-earned. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles. But tonight, the man who'd never forgotten the lessons of 17 foster homes savored the knowledge that his enemies had learned the cost of underestimating someone who'd built himself from nothing, and who never, ever forgave betrayal. Chapter 7. Foundation of Steel. Derek Morrison stood at the construction site of the Urban Renewal Project, his expression unyielding as crews demolished the old factory walls. The rubble reminded him of Melissa and Rick's shattered schemes. Mr. Morrison, Jack Torres approached with a morning briefing. FBI's latest report shows Rick Lancaster tried to cut another deal. Offered to testify about bribes at 3 different development companies. Let him sink them all, Derek replied, checking the blueprints. Makes our position stronger when we bid on their abandoned projects. The site manager called for his attention. Derek moved through the chaos with practiced ease, his presence commanding immediate respect from the workers. Unlike other developers who'd abandoned Detroit's struggling neighborhoods, he remained hands-on, proving his strength through action rather than words. Isabella arrived with fresh coffee and updates. At 19, she'd already earned respect from Morrison Properties' executive team through her ruthless analysis of competing development proposals. The Business Ethics Initiative is gaining traction, she reported. 3 major universities want to use Mom and Rick's downfall as a case study. I've drafted responses emphasizing your commitment to community development. Derek nodded, pride mixing with satisfaction. And your brother? Mason's photography exhibition opens next week. He's focused on contrasting the old industrial ruins with the new community spaces. The Detroit Free Press wants to interview him about documenting the transformation. Their conversation paused as Catherine Lancaster's car pulled up to the site. She emerged looking polished despite the early hour, carrying files that promised more destruction for their mutual enemies. The federal prosecutor added money laundering charges, she announced without preamble. Rick's attempt to hide assets before his arrest gave them everything they needed. Melissa's signatures on those accounts mean she's equally exposed. Derek's smile carried no warmth. Good. How's the foundation progressing? The first round of grants goes out next week. We're focusing on support programs for children of divorce, particularly those impacted by financial crimes. Catherine's expression matched his for coldness. I've made sure the press releases highlight the foundation's origin story. Jack Torres rejoined them with security updates. The expansion plan for our consulting division is ready. 3 major developers have already requested audits of their compliance procedures. They're running scared, Derek observed, satisfaction evident. Watching Rick and Melissa's destruction made them realize their own vulnerabilities. The day continued with Derek moving between meetings and site inspections. Each decision, each interaction demonstrated why he'd risen from foster care to build an empire. Unlike Melissa's social climbing or Rick's shortcuts, Derek's power came from understanding that true strength required absolute control. Mason arrived in the afternoon with his camera, documenting the transformation of Detroit's abandoned factories into spaces that would serve the community. His photographs captured more than physical changes. They showed the ruthless efficiency with which Derek Morrison rebuilt from betrayal. Dad, Mason called, reviewing images on his camera. I found some old photos from company events, the ones showing Rick's pattern of harassment. The FBI wants to use them in their case. Give them everything, Derek commanded. I want the prosecution to bury them so deep they never resurface. A local news crew arrived for scheduled interviews about the Urban Renewal Project. Derek stood against the backdrop of construction, his presence dominating the scene. Mr. Morrison, the reporter began, your ex-wife and Richard Lancaster face serious federal charges. How has this affected Morrison Properties? It's demonstrated our commitment to ethical development, Derek replied, his voice carrying authority. When we discovered corruption, we acted decisively. Detroit deserves developers who build communities, not criminals who destroy them. Catherine watched the interview from the sidelines, noting how Derek turned scandal into strength. Later, in his side office, she outlined their next moves. The Foundation's legal aid program launches next month, she explained. We're already receiving applications from families impacted by white-collar crime. The publicity will further damage Rick and Melissa's reputations. Perfect timing, Derek approved. The renewal project's first phase opens then. Show everyone who backed the wrong side what they've lost. Jack entered with more updates. Sir, Melissa's design firm lost another major contract. Their client list is dropping fast. Make sure our recommended designers are available to take over, Derek instructed. I want her to watch her professional reputation disappear piece by piece. The sun set over Detroit as Derek reviewed Mason's exhibition photos. Each image told the story of transformation, not just of buildings, but of power. Where Melissa and Rick had tried to destroy him through betrayal, he'd turned their attack into an opportunity to demonstrate his absolute dominance. Dad, Isabella called from the doorway. The business school wants me to give a guest lecture on corporate ethics. They're particularly interested in how you transformed an attack on the company into positive change. Derek's expression showed fierce pride. His children had chosen strength over weakness, loyalty over betrayal. They'd learned what his foster care experience had taught him. That true power came from being unforgiving with enemies while protecting those who proved their worth. The urban renewal project rose from Detroit's ruins, a testament to Derek Morrison's vision. But unlike the buildings he replaced, the destruction he'd brought to his betrayers would leave nothing to rebuild. Chapter 8. Justice Served Cold. The federal courthouse buzzed with tension as Rick Lancaster faced sentencing. Derek Morrison sat in the gallery, his presence a reminder of how completely he'd orchestrated his enemy's destruction. The defendant's pattern of fraud spans 5 states, the prosecutor declared. His attempts to implicate others only revealed the extent of his crimes. The government recommends the maximum sentence. Rick's designer's suit hung loose on his frame, stress having taken its toll. His eyes darted to Derek, seeing not the trash he'd once mocked, but the architect of his destruction. Catherine Lancaster sat beside Derek, her testimony having sealed her ex-husband's fate. The judge received the complete documentation this morning, she whispered, including Mason's photographs showing Rick's harassment at company functions. The sentence came down like a hammer. 15 years federal prison, assets seized, restitution ordered. Rick's attempt to speak was cut short by the judge's gavel. As federal marshals led him away, Derek remained seated, watching his enemy's final humiliation with cold satisfaction. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed for comments. Mr. Morrison, your ex-wife faces similar charges next week. Any statement? Justice serves itself, Derek replied. Morrison Properties focuses on building communities, not commenting on criminals. In his office later, Jack Torres brought updates on Melissa's crumbling world. Her design firm lost their last major client. The bank's foreclosing on her condo. Her attempts to access family trust funds were denied. Good, Derek approved. Make sure our partners know anyone hiring her faces losing our contracts. I want her professional reputation as dead as her social standing. Isabella entered with news from the business community. The Ethics Foundation's first report is trending in financial circles. 3 more developers have requested our compliance consulting services. They've learned from Rick and Melissa's example, Derek noted with satisfaction. Fear is an effective teacher. The week of Melissa's trial brought more destruction. Each day revealed new evidence of her complicity in Rick's schemes. Mason's photographs and Isabella's testimony showed a pattern of behavior that devastated her claims of innocence. The prosecution added our analysis of her design firm's contracts, Catherine reported. Clear evidence of money laundering. The jury took notes. Derek watched the proceedings with the same ruthless focus that had built his empire. Each piece of evidence, each witness testimony had been orchestrated for maximum impact. When Melissa finally faced sentencing, her designer outfit couldn't hide her defeat. The defendant's actions show complete disregard for business ethics and family loyalty, the judge declared. The court sentences her to 8 years federal prison, with orders for restitution. Melissa's attempt to make eye contact with her children failed. Isabella and Mason sat behind their stepfather, their choice of loyalty clear to all observers. The press conference afterward showcased Derek's complete victory. Reporters crowded around as he announced the Morrison Foundation's latest initiative. "Today we launch a program supporting families impacted by white-collar crime," he declared. Morrison Properties believes in building communities, not exploiting them. "Our success comes from integrity, not fraud." Catherine stood beside him, their alliance a powerful symbol of rebuilding from betrayal. "The foundation will provide legal aid and support services," she added. "We're turning personal experience into positive change." Back at Morrison Properties, Derek reviewed the latest project proposals. Each development showcased his vision for urban renewal, a stark contrast to Rick Lancaster's failed schemes. "The FBI is expanding their investigation," Jack reported. Rick's cooperation exposed corruption at 3 more development companies. "Their projects will be up for bid soon. Prepare takeover proposals," Derek commanded. "I want their assets stripped and repurposed for community benefit. Show everyone what happens when they chose the wrong side." Isabella's business school presentation on corporate ethics went viral in financial circles. Her analysis of Morrison Properties' response to corruption became required reading at top MBA programs. "You've turned this into a masterclass in power," Catherine observed, reviewing the presentation. "Not just destroying enemies, but building strength from their attacks." "I learned in foster care that survival isn't enough," Derek replied. "True power comes from making sure your enemy's destruction serves as a warning to others." Mason's photography exhibition opened to critical acclaim. His images captured the contrast between destruction and renewal, both in Detroit's landscape and in human lives. "These photographs tell a story of transformation," an art critic wrote. "They show how strength rises from ruins, how betrayal can be turned into triumph." Derek attended the opening with Catherine, their public appearance sparking fresh speculation. But both understood that romance would wait until their enemy's destruction was complete. "The foundation's next phase is ready," Catherine informed him. "We're expanding support services to 3 more states. Each program highlights the consequences of corporate fraud." "Perfect timing," Derek approved. "As Rick and Melissa begin their prison terms, we'll show the world how to build something meaningful from their destruction." Chapter 9. The New Blueprint. 1 year after the Lake House incident, Morrison Properties hosted a gala celebrating the urban renewal project's completion. The transformed factory complex stood as a testament to Derek's vision and his ability to destroy enemies while building empire. "Tonight showcases more than development," he declared to the assembled business leaders. "It proves that integrity builds lasting success, while corruption leads to destruction." The audience included developers who'd watched Rick and Melissa's downfall with growing fear. They'd learned that crossing Derek Morrison meant complete annihilation, professional, financial, and personal. Isabella, fresh from her business school triumph, presented the Morrison Foundation's expansion plans. "Our ethics initiative has partnered with 12 universities," she announced. "We're teaching future business leaders the true cost of betrayal." Mason's photographs lined the walls, telling the story of Detroit's transformation. But informed observers saw deeper meaning in his images of demolition and rebuilding. "Your children have become powerful allies," Catherine observed, watching Isabella field questions from investors. "They chose strength over weakness," Derek replied. "Loyalty over betrayal." Everything else followed from that decision. Jack Torres approached with security updates. "Sir, the FBI's investigation has expanded to 2 more states. Rick's desperate enough to implicate anyone who might reduce his sentence." "Good," Derek approved. "Let him destroy anyone who ever supported him. Makes our position stronger." The gala showcased Morrison Properties' dominance in Detroit's development scene. Where other developers had failed or fled, Derek had built an empire based on absolute control and ruthless elimination of threats. "The community support programs are expanding," Catherine reported. Each success story highlights how we've turned personal betrayal into public benefit. Derek's speech to the gathered elite carried clear warnings beneath its surface. Morrison Properties builds communities that last. Anyone threatening that discovers why integrity matters more than social connections or quick profits. The business journals praised Morrison Properties' transformation of Detroit's industrial zones. But their profiles carried subtle warnings about the consequences of opposing Derek Morrison's vision. Isabella's graduation speech at her business school became required viewing for corporate ethics classes. Success comes from understanding power, she declared. Real power isn't about social status or connections. It's about building things that last and being strong enough to destroy anything that threatens them. Mason's Foundation's exhibition toured major cities, its images revealing the stark contrast between creation and destruction. In Detroit's business circles, everyone understood the deeper message about crossing Derek Morrison. The Lake House property, seized in federal asset forfeiture, underwent transformation into a youth support center. Derek's decision to fund its renovation through the Morrison Foundation carried powerful symbolism. From this place of betrayal, he announced at the center's opening, "We'll help children learn the importance of loyalty and strength. Some lessons can only be taught through example." Catherine's legal foundation partnered with Morrison Properties on expanding community programs. Their professional collaboration sparked rumors of deeper connection, but both understood that personal relationships required perfect timing. The final appeals were denied, she reported one evening. Rick and Melissa have no legal options left. Their destruction is complete. Derek stood in his office, surveying the city he'd helped rebuild. Each building risen from ruins stood as testament to his absolute refusal to show mercy to enemies. The business community had learned its lesson. Morrison Properties' ethical development approach became industry standard not through choice, but through fear of consequences. Isabella headed the company's expansion into new markets, while Mason's photographs documented their transformation of urban spaces. The children who'd chosen their stepfather's strength over their mother's betrayal had become powers in their own right. The Morrison Foundation support programs served as constant reminders of what happened to those who betrayed trust. Each success story carried warnings about the price of crossing Derek Morrison. "You've built something remarkable," Catherine observed during the Foundation's board meeting. "Not just buildings or programs, but a legacy of power through absolute control." "I learned in foster care that mercy to enemies is weakness," Derek replied. "True strength comes from making sure betrayal carries consequences that echo for generations." The sun set over Detroit as Derek Morrison, the man who'd risen from nothing to build an empire, stood victorious. His enemies served their prison terms in obscurity, while he transformed their destruction into monuments to his power. The business world had learned its lesson. Crossing Derek Morrison meant total annihilation. But for those who proved loyal, his children, Catherine, Jack Torres, his protection was absolute. In the end, Derek Morrison built more than buildings. He created a legacy of power based on ruthless elimination of threats and absolute control over his domain. The story of Melissa and Rick's destruction became a warning passed through business circles, a reminder that some men can't be betrayed without consequences that last lifetimes. Epilogue: 10 years later, the Morrison Properties headquarters dominated Detroit's skyline, its steel and glass tower a testament to Derek Morrison's complete triumph over those who'd tried to destroy him. At 50, Derek's presence commanded even more respect than in his younger years. His hair had grayed at the temples, but his eyes retained their ruthless focus. "The Lancaster development portfolio is up for auction," Jack Torres reported, now chief of corporate security for Morrison's nationwide operations. Federal trustees want to liquidate the last assets before Rick's release next year. Derek's smile carried decades of satisfied vengeance. "Buy everything. I want him to see our name on his former buildings when he gets out." The years had proven the wisdom of Derek's ruthless response to betrayal. Morrison Properties had expanded across 12 states, transforming urban spaces while maintaining iron control over their operations. Each project carried their signature combination of community development and absolute dominance of local markets. Isabella Morrison-Shin, now 32 and Executive Vice President of Strategic Development, entered her father's office with the latest expansion plans. Marriage to a prominent tech entrepreneur and motherhood hadn't softened her approach to business. The Chicago acquisition is ready, she announced. Their board folded once we demonstrated our financial leverage. The same strategy you used against Mom and Rick still works. Show strength, then crush any resistance. Derek nodded with approval. His daughter had learned his lessons well, becoming feared in business circles for her ability to identify and exploit competitors' weaknesses. Her Harvard Business School case study on Morrison Properties' response to corporate betrayal remained required reading at top MBA programs. Speaking of Mom, Isabella continued, her tone cold. Mason tracked her after her release last year. She's working as a junior designer at a small firm in Phoenix. No clients will risk hiring her independently after what we did to her reputation. The destruction of Melissa's life remained total. 8 years in federal prison had been just the beginning. Derek's influence ensured that no significant design firm would hire her, while her former social circles remained firmly closed. Her attempts to contact her children had met with silence. Mason Morrison, at 29, had transformed his photography into a powerful tool of corporate storytelling. His images of urban transformation graced magazine covers, but insiders recognized his real role, documenting Morrison Properties' dominance for future case studies and power. Dad, Mason called from the doorway, camera in hand despite his executive position. The Foundation's 10th anniversary gala needs your approval on the presentation. Catherine wants to highlight our impact on families affected by corporate fraud. Catherine Lancaster Morrison smiled as she joined them. Her marriage to Derek 5 years ago had united two formidable forces in Detroit's business community. Their wedding announcement had caused Rick Lancaster to attempt suicide in prison, a detail they'd ensured reached him through careful channels. The Foundation's expanding again, Catherine reported. 3 more cities, each one targeting areas where Rick or Melissa had connections. I want their complete isolation visible in statistics. The Morrison Foundation had grown into a powerful force, ostensibly supporting families impacted by white-collar crime while serving as a constant reminder of Derek's ability to transform personal revenge into institutional power. Jack Torres pulled up the latest security briefing on his tablet. Rick's prison counselor reports he's showing signs of severe depression as his release approaches. Knowing we own everything he built, that his own documentation helped destroy other developers. It's breaking him completely. Good. Derek's voice carried the same steel that had driven him up from foster care. Make sure he sees the Foundation's billboards when he gets out. I want him reminded daily of who destroyed him. The Morrison family gathered that evening for dinner in Derek's penthouse office. Isabella's husband, tech mogul James Chun, had learned to navigate the family's complex power dynamics. Their 5-year-old daughter, Alexandria, already showed signs of her parents' and grandfather's ruthless focus. The tech integration for the new developments is ready, James reported. We're implementing it across all Morrison properties, starting with the converted Lancaster buildings. Mason's wife, Sarah, a federal prosecutor he'd met during Rick's trial, shared updates from legal circles. Rick's former associates are still facing charges based on his desperate testimony. Your strategy of letting him destroy everyone who ever supported him worked perfectly. The conversation turned to the upcoming Foundation Gala. The event would showcase 10 years of Morrison Properties' dominance while serving as a refined display of revenge. Each success story, each statistic would remind Detroit's business community of the consequences of betrayal. Alexandria asked about her grandmother yesterday. Isabella mentioned watching her daughter draw detailed plans for her dollhouse. I showed her the case study materials. She needs to understand early why we don't tolerate betrayal. Derek's expression softened slightly, his only weakness being pride in how his ruthlessness had passed to the next generation. She'll learn what you learned. Strength requires absolute control. Betrayal demands complete destruction. Catherine touched his hand, their marriage a partnership built on shared understanding of power. The Foundation's youth programs are expanding. We're teaching business ethics to high school students now, using Rick and Melissa's downfall as a primary case study. The years had proven Derek's approach correct. Morrison Properties dominated urban development across the Midwest. Their success built on a reputation for both community investment and ruthless destruction of opponents. The business world had learned its lesson. Crossing Derek Morrison meant multi-generational consequences. Jack Torres, who'd stood with Derek from the beginning, provided the latest surveillance. Rick's prison contacts report he's been asking about Morrison Properties expansion. The psychological impact of seeing his life's work absorbed by the man he betrayed. It's destroying what's left of him. Increase the foundation's advertising near his halfway house location, Derek commanded. I want our success visible from his prison release through his dying day. Isabella checked her phone, a cold smile playing across her features. Mom tried to apply for a design position with one of our subsidiary firms in Phoenix. Their rejection letter included a detailed explanation of why association with her name destroys professional credibility. The Morrison Empire had grown beyond Derek's original vision, becoming a dynasty built on absolute control and generational revenge. Isabella and Mason had proven themselves worthy successors, their own children already showing signs of the family's trademark ruthlessness. The urban renewal project where this all started, Mason noted, reviewing photographs on his laptop. It's become a case study in transformational development. Students analyze how you turned personal betrayal into market dominance. Catherine's legal foundations had expanded alongside Morrison Properties, their programs serving as sophisticated instruments of ongoing revenge. We're launching a scholarship program, she announced, supporting children of white-collar crime victims. The press coverage will ensure Rick and Melissa never escape their legacy. Derek stood at his office windows, surveying the city he'd conquered. From foster child to empire builder, he'd proven that absolute ruthlessness was the key to lasting power. His marriage to Catherine had added layers of refinement to his revenge, while his children had become architects of their own powerful legacies. Alexandria's teacher mentioned she's already showing leadership qualities, Isabella reported proudly. She organized her class project with remarkable focus on controlling resources and eliminating opposition. The next generation of Morrisons would carry forward Derek's lessons about power and consequences. His grandchildren would inherit not just wealth and influence, but an understanding that true strength came from absolute control and ruthless response to betrayal. The Morrison Foundation's decennial gala approached, promising to showcase their complete triumph. The guest list included business leaders who'd learned to fear crossing Derek Morrison, social circles that had abandoned Melissa, and journalists who documented their rise as warnings to others. The foundation's reach extends to 20 states now, Catherine noted, reviewing the anniversary materials. Each program carries subtle reminders of what happens to those who betray trust. The psychological impact on Rick and Melissa, knowing their downfall, funds these warnings to others. Derek's empire had transcended mere business success. He'd created a legacy of power based on absolute dominance and multi-generational revenge. The business world whispered about crossing Derek Morrison the way children whispered about monsters, with primal fear of destruction. Isabella and Mason had inherited their father's understanding of power, while adding their own innovations to maintaining control. Their children would grow up knowing the family history, not just of triumph over betrayal, but of ensuring that enemies' destruction served as eternal warnings to others. The sun set over Detroit as the Morrison family finalized plans for their foundation's gala. In prison, Rick Lancaster counted days until a release that promised no relief, knowing Derek owned his past achievements and controlled his future possibilities. In Phoenix, Melissa lived in professional and social exile, her attempts at rebuilding blocked at every turn by her ex-husband's infinite reach. Derek Morrison, the boy from foster care who'd built an empire, had created more than success. He'd established a dynasty based on absolute power and generational revenge, ensuring that the consequences of betraying his trust would echo through decades, serving as warnings in business schools and boardrooms about the true meaning of ruthless control. The future stretched before them, promising continued expansion of their influence and power. The Morrison name had become synonymous with both successful development and ruthless destruction of enemies. Future generations would learn their family motto through example: Power requires control, betrayal demands destruction, and revenge, properly executed, serves as an eternal warning to others. In his office high above Detroit, Derek Morrison allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. His enemies were destroyed, his children were worthy successors, and his legacy of power would endure through generations. The foster child who'd learned early lessons about betrayal had built an empire, ensuring that those who crossed him would face consequences that outlived their own defeats. The Morrison dynasty would continue, guided by principles of absolute control and ruthless response to opposition. In boardrooms and business schools, their story would be studied not just as a tale of success, but as a warning about the generational consequences of betraying those who understand that true power comes from being willing to destroy enemies so